So we're at the bottom of page 104 in chapter 6. This is mortification, non-attachment, and livelihood, right livelihood. In the practice of mortification, as in most other fields, advances along a knife edge. On the one side lurks the cilia of egocentric austerity, on the other, Charbitus of an uncaring quietism. So, thinking of self and only self and being seemingly perfect or completely detached. The holy indifference inculcated by the exponents of the perennial philosophy is neither stoicism nor mere passivity. It is rather an active resignation. Self-will is renounced, not that there may be a total holiday from willing, but that the divine will may use the mortified mind and body as its instrument for good. And all that simply means is just get out of the way. There's an underlying current, energy, feeling, whatever you want to call it. Everyone's experienced something. Go with that, where you are. Or we may say with Kabir that the devout seeker is he who mingles in his heart the double currents of love and detachment, like the mingling of the streams of the Ganges and Yamuna. Until we put an end to particular attachments, there can be no love of God with the whole heart, mind, and strength, and no universal charity towards all creatures for God's sake. Hence the hard sayings in the Gospels about the need to renounce exclusive familial ties. And if the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head, if the Tathagata and the Bodhisattvas have their thoughts awakened to the nature of reality without abiding in anything whatever, this is because a truly God-like love, which, like the sun, shines equally upon the just and the unjust, is impossible to a mind imprisoned in private preferences and aversions. St. John of the Cross says, the soul that is attached to anything, however much good there may be in it, will not arrive at the liberty of divine union. For whether it be a strong wire rope or a slender and delicate thread that holds the bird, it matters not, if it really holds it fast. For until the cord be broken, the bird cannot fly. So the soul, held by the bonds of human affections, however slight they may be, cannot, while they last, make its way to God. There's a lot in this one. So, top of 106. Yeah. So, the love of our relations, friends, and benefactors is itself according to God, but we may love them excessively, as that could even be our teachers, our mentors, anything, as also our vocations, however spiritual they be, and our devotional exercises, which we should yet love very greatly, may be loved inordinately when we set them above obedience and the moral general good, or care for them as an end, which, when they are only means. Chang Tzu. Be an empty vessel. This is the idea of non-attachment. Suppose a boat is crossing a river and another boat, an empty one, is about to collide with it. Even an irritable man would not lose his temper. But suppose there was someone in the second boat, then the occupant of the first would shout to him to keep clear. And if he did not hear the first time, nor even when called to 3 times, bad language would inevitably ensue. In the first case, there was no anger. In the second, there was. Because in the first case, the boat was empty, and in the second, it was occupied. And so it is with man. If he could only pass empty through life, who would be able to injure him? All right, let's talk about the struggles here with mortification. It can seem painful. It is by losing the egocentric life that we save the hitherto latent and undiscovered life which, in the spiritual part of our being, we share with the divine ground, our true essence of everything. This newfound life is more abundant than the other and of a different and higher kind. Its possession is liberation into the eternal, and liberation is beatitude. Necessarily so, for the Brahmin, who is one with Atman, is not only being and knowledge, but also bliss, and after love and peace, the final fruit of the spirit is joy. Mortification is painful, but that pain is one of the preconditions of blessedness. It's painful because you're letting go of your oldest friend. Doesn't necessarily mean he's your best friend, but oldest friend. Change isn't hard. Resistance to change is what's hard. This fact of spiritual experience is sometimes obscured by the language in which it is described. Thus, when Christ says that the kingdom of heaven cannot be entered except by those who are as little children, we are apt to forget, so touched at the image evoked by a simple phrase, that a man cannot become childlike unless he chooses to undertake the most strenuous and searching course of self-denial. In practice, the command to become as little children is identical with the command to lose one's life. As Traherne makes clear in the beautiful passage quoted in the section on God and the world, one cannot know created nature in all of its essentially sacred beauty unless one first unlearns the dirty service of adult humanity. Seen through the dung-colored spectacles of self-interest, the universe looks singularly like a dung heap. And as, through long wearing, the spectacles have grown onto the eyeballs, the process of cleansing the doors of perception is often, at any rate, in the early stages of the spiritual life, painfully like a surgical operation. Later on, it is true, even self-nodding may be suffused with the joy of the spirit. On this point, we will continue. So, the fruit of non-attachment is freedom again. So what's the point of doing this? Why would you do this? Why would you do this? Well, attachment to self is suffering. As long as I am this or that, or have this or that, I am not all things and I have not all things. Become pure till you neither are nor have either this or that. Then you are omnipresent, and being neither this nor that are all things. Meister Eckhart. A little piece from the top here. Yeah, 108. Oh, yes. Here's an idea of what is the proper use of the word communism. The proper use. And it doesn't mean in political or social. It means here. There can be no complete communism, as it were, except in the goods of the spirit and to some extent also of the mind, and only when such goods are possessed by men and women in a state of non-attachment and self-denial. Certain things are only experienced even more so when they're given away. Ideas, thoughts, experience, communicating, connection. When they're shared, it's more. Because the goods of the intellect, the emotions, and the imagination are real goods, but they are not the final good, and when we treat them as ends in themselves, we fall into idolatry. Mortification of will, desire, and action is not enough. There must also be mortification in the fields of knowing, thinking, feeling, and fancying. And to that, William Law. Man's intellectual faculties are, by the fall, in a much worse state than his animal appetites and want a much greater self-denial. And when own will, own understanding, and own imagination have their natural strength indulged and gratified, and are made seemingly rich and honorable with the treasures acquired from a study of the belles lettres. That's a French, so obviously I don't speak it, pronounced it incorrectly. Belles lettres. Degrees. They will just as much help poor fallen men to be like-minded with Christ as the art of cookery, well and duly studied, will help a professor of the gospel to the spirit and practice of Christian abstinence. So, we spend too much time, energy, focus on this great thinking mind. It becomes a master, not a servant. So the same overevaluation of culture, the same belief that art and literature are ends in themselves, can flourish in isolation from a reasonable and realistic philosophy of life, have even invaded the schools and colleges. Among advanced educationists, there are many people who seem to think all will be well so long as adolescents are permitted to express themselves and small children are encouraged to be creative in the art class. But alas, plasticine and self-expression will not solve the problems of education, nor will technology and vocational guidance, nor the classics and the 100 best books. The following criticisms of education were made more than 2.5 centuries ago, but they are as relevant today as they were in the 7th century. Thomas Traherne: he knoweth nothing as he ought to know, who thinks he knoweth anything without seeing its place and the manner how it relateth to God, angels and men, and to all the creatures in earth, heaven and hell, time and eternity. Oh yeah. So, instead, what follows is an account of the intellectual mortifications which must be practiced by those whose primary concern is with the knowledge of the Godhead in the interior heights of the soul. Albertus Magnus, we believe. Happy is the man who, by continually effacing all images and through introversion and the lifting up of his mind to God, at last forgets and leaves behind all such hindrances. For by such means only he operates inwardly with his naked, pure, simple intellect and affections about the most pure and simple object, God, consciousness. Therefore, see that thy whole exercise about God within thee may depend wholly and only on that naked intellect, affection, and will. For indeed, this exercise cannot be discharged by any bodily organ or by the external senses, but only by that which constitutes the essence of man, understanding and love, experience of that. If therefore thou desirest a safe stair and short path to arrive at the end of true bliss, then with an intent mind, earnestly desire and aspire for continual cleanness of heart and purity of mind. Add to this a constant calm and tranquility of the senses, and a recollecting of the affections of the heart, of the soul, of the spirit, continually fixing them above. Work to simplify the heart, that being immovable and at peace from any invading vain phantasms, thou mayest always stand fast in the Lord within thee, to that degree as if thy soul had already entered the always present now of eternity. That is the state of the deity. To mount to God is to enter into oneself. For he who so mounts and enters goes above and beyond himself, he truly mounts up to God. The mind must then raise itself above itself and say, he who above all I need is above all I know. And so carried into the darkness of the mind, gathering itself into that all-sufficient good, it learns to stay at home, and with its whole affection, it cleaves and becomes habitually fixed in the supreme good within. Thus continue, until thou becomest immutable and dost arrive at that true life which is God himself, perpetually, without any vicissitude of space or time, reposing in that inward quiet and secret mansion of the deity. That's good.